There's a sound the ocean makes when it hates you. If you've ever lived under it, you know what I mean. It's not the steady groan of the hull or the distant thump of the pumps. It's that one wrong noise that doesn't fit. A knock that's too slow. A ping that echoes for too long. A voice-shaped sound under 1,000 meters of water. I hear it every night through 5 meters of steel and concrete and brine, and I know it's for me. I live in a submerged complex, a converted military listening station bolted into the North Atlantic shelf. From the surface, we're just a set of GPS coordinates and a bobbing buoy with a blinking light. But under that, there's a long, pressurized transit tube with a rail car that drags you down through the thermocline and into the dark. At the bottom of that is us. The place is basically a stack of cylinders and domes welded together in the 70s, full of rust, salt, and recycled air. Years ago, it was some kind of classified sonar base. Now it's repurposed residential infrastructure for people who want to be as far from other people as possible without technically leaving Earth. We're 87 permanent residents, last time I checked. Engineers, techs, one board teacher, a handful of kids, a doctor, a security team, and a support staff that keep the lights on. We got a desal plant, algae scrubbers, hydroponics, a tiny gym, a med bay, a cramped little schoolroom, a chapel nobody uses, and a few stores in the main hub. If the rail car to the surface broke, we could live down here for months before anyone topside bothered to come check. I work in one of those stores, a glorified convenience kiosk on level 4, Module C. Dry goods, canned food, vacuum-packed meals, batteries, toiletries, cheap snacks, and the odd luxury item that comes down on the monthly supply run. If you need caffeine or cigarettes at midnight at 600 meters, you buy it from me. That morning, the one I'm trying to talk about, I woke up with cold salt taste in my mouth and a weight on my legs. For a second, half asleep, I thought a valve had blown and my bunk was flooding. The air down here is always wet, but this felt heavier, like someone had dumped a bucket of water over the blanket. I jerked my eyes open, heart hammering, already reaching for the emergency mask clipped to the bulkhead. Instead of a wall of water, I saw fur. White fur, curled over my thighs in a big fluffy heap, breathing slow, smelling like wet wool and popcorn, and a little bit like the cheap soap from the rec module showers. For a full 3 seconds, my brain did this weird lurch, like I was watching someone else's memory. Then it snapped into place, and all the panic evaporated. "Hey, monster," I muttered. The big white golden doodle lifted her head, yawned in my face, and thumped the bunk with her tail hard enough to rattle the frame. Her nose was cold against my stomach through the blanket. Her eyes were that impossible soft brown you only see on dogs and kids in cereal commercials. I laughed without meaning to. The cold, the metallic tang of the recycled air, the constant faint vibration from the station, all of it faded under the stupid, simple happiness of having her there, pressed against me. I scratched behind her ears. My fingers came away a little damp, but that was normal. Humidity, condensation. Everything down here sweats. All right, I said. I'm up. You win." She made that huffing noise that always sounded like she was trying to speak and rolled on her back, displaying a ridiculous expanse of belly. I gave it a rub because I'm not a monster, and she did that whole body wiggle that shakes her ears. It's strange, what you don't question in the moment. I swung my legs out of the bunk, nudging her off me, and felt the usual shock of cold steel under my bare feet. Condensation collected under the mat as I stood. I pulled on station-issue thermal leggings and a faded blue work shirt with the logo half peeled from too many washes. The dog hopped down with a soft whomp, shook herself, sending a faint mist into the air, then padded into the little living area. My cabin is one of the older ones on level 5. 15 square meters of tan walls, bolted furniture, a tiny wet room, and a single round viewport that looks out into black water. The glass is thick as my hand is wide, reinforced, scarred with decades of micro-impacts and barnacle ghost rings from when we used to be a shallower structure. She planted her front paws on the metal ledge beneath the viewport, and stared out into the void like she always did. I caught her reflection in the glass. Big, shaggy, white fur glowing a little in the emergency strip lights, nose almost touching the cold pane. Beyond her, outside, there was nothing, just a gradient from dark gray to absolute black. If something had drifted past right then, a jellyfish or a shark or some weird deep sea thing, I don't think I would have seen it. The outside lights were off to save power. We only turned them on for inspections or when tourists came down on the rare eco-experience trips. I checked the time on the wall display. 6:10. I was already running late. Shit, I muttered. I went into the little galley corner and opened the cupboard where I kept my food. Tins, ration bars, instant coffee, a jar of peanut butter, so old the label was curling. Nothing that said dog food. The undersink cabinet was the same. Cleaning supplies, a spare filter, a bundle of rusted tools previous tenants had left. No bowls on the floor, no bag of kibble, no chew toys scattered over the mat. Just my stuff, the way it had always been. A little knot of confusion tried to form in my head. I rubbed my thumb over the ridge of the counter, feeling the gritty salt film that never quite goes away. I'll pick something up on my break, I thought. She's a big girl. She can miss one meal. I filled a ceramic mixing bowl with water from the filtered tap and set it on the floor anyway. The dog trotted over, sniffed it, gave it a token lap or two, then came back to lean against my legs while I pulled on my boots. She felt solid and real and familiar. When I bent down to clip the Velcro on my left boot, she licked the back of my neck once. The sensation made me shiver and smile at the same time. Guard the place, I told her, giving her one last pat. No parties, no chewing. She huffed like she understood and patted back toward the viewport, nails clicking softly on the metal. The door hissed when I opened it, pressure equalizing with that faint ear pop you stop noticing after a while. The corridor outside was dim, lit by the same low strip lights. Condensation beaded on the overhead pipes and dripped into the catch trays bolted to the walls. Someone's music leaked through a door down the line, muffled drums under the hum of the main circulation fans. I stepped out, pulled the door shut behind me until it latched, and tried not to think about how quiet it got when you left a warm cabin for the rest of the station. There's a particular kind of silence under that much water. You always feel like there should be noises from the sea, but there aren't. Not really. Just the building and your own blood in your ears. On my way to the spine elevator, I passed the big pressure bulkhead that leads to the rail tunnel. It's a round door 3 meters across, painted yellow once, now mostly rusty orange and fingerprints. Thick pipes and cables snake into the wall around it. There's a little porthole in the center, black at that hour. Behind it is a long, slanting tube full of air and steel wheels. Then 15 minutes of ascent to the wavering line of the surface. Sometimes I stand there and listen. Not for traffic, there's not enough of it to matter, but for that other sound, the one that doesn't belong. That morning, there was nothing. Just the usual thrum of the pump station and the occasional tick in the bulkhead like it was settling. I slapped the call button for the elevator and shoved my hands into my pockets. My fingers were still damp from the dog's fur. I rubbed thumb and forefinger together, feeling the residual slickness. The elevator arrived with a clunk and a rattle. It's an old cage, more vertical tram than lift, running the full height of the complex. I stepped inside and hit the button for level 4. Before the doors could close, a hand shot between them. The sensors aren't subtle. They slammed shut on the pale fingers, bounced, then jerked open again. Agnes Keller stepped in like nothing had happened, clutching her tablet to her chest. "Morning," I said automatically. Agnes is mid-50s, short, gray hair cut in a strict bob, the kind of face that looks like it was carved out of a rock and given one expression: annoyed. She's the nurse, or whatever the underwater equivalent is. Works in the med bay with Dr. Pyre. Spends most of her time yelling at people about hydration and bone density and cutting corners on safety. She was in her usual faded pink scrubs and a too big station fleece. What wasn't usual was her face. She was smiling. not a polite curl of the lips, not the wry little smirk she gives kids when they make a joke. A full, genuine, eyes crinkling, teeth showing smile that made her look 10 years younger. I must have stared because she noticed. The smile got a little wider. "Good morning," she said. "You're in late." I shrugged. Alarm didn't go off. "That's not like you." She looked up at the elevator's ceiling, where the moisture had gathered in a wobbling droplet around a bolt. I had a late start too. Thought I'd never get out of bed. "Yeah," I said, mostly out of habit. "My boy didn't want to let me go," she said, and there was so much warmth in her voice it almost embarrassed me. "Told me a joke. One of those stupid ones." I couldn't stop laughing. She chuckled at the memory, actually chuckled, like she had something warm in her chest instead of the usual ice. The elevator hummed as we descended past level 6. The floor vibrated faintly under my boots. I swallowed. "Did you say your boy?" "My son," she said. She glanced sideways at me. "You all right? You look like you need the sick bay more than my boy did." Said his stomach hurt. "It was just nerves. He's not used to school down here yet." The hair on the back of my neck prickled. There's a little list in my head of everyone who lives in the complex. You make one whether you want to or not when you're trapped in a tube with less than 100 people. Who snores above you, who plays music too loud at odd hours, who leaves their laundry in the communal dryer, who has kids. We have 4 children on base, last count. The Sanchez twins, 7. Little Eva from hydroponics, 5. And a Mesic boy who just turned 9 and thinks the gym is his personal playground. Agnes does not have a son. "Oh," I said, because what else do you fucking say to that? "Right. Yeah, kids." She laughed again. "He's a good boy. Too serious. Takes after his father." "Do you have any kids?" I said. "No. God, no." She gave me a knowing look that made my stomach twist. "You will. Sooner than you think. Once you stop hiding down here." The elevator clunked to a halt. Level 4. The doors rattled open. A gust of colder air hit us, smelling faintly of oil and coffee. Somewhere far down the corridor, a radio crackled. Agnes stepped out and started toward the central hub, humming under her breath. I stayed where I was a second longer, fingers digging into my palms. "You're tired," I told myself. "You're just tired." Misheard her. Thought she said boy when she said patient. People can smile, you asshole. It's not illegal. But the unease stuck to me like the film of salt on everything down here. The store sits on the inner curve of the main hub, between the rec room and the little prayer space the company built for PR and forgot. When I walked in, Marcus Lynn was already pacing the narrow aisles with his clipboard, lips pursed. Lynn is one of those guys who always looks like he's searching for something to disapprove of. Early 40s, mustache, hair clipped short, uniform crisp even when he's been on for 12 hours. He's 5'0" and walks like he owns the station. He gave me a once-over, the kind of look you use to evaluate damaged goods. "You're late," he said in his clipped, accented English. "I know, I don't want to hear it." He made a little note on his clipboard. "We open in 10. Drinks fridge needs restocking. Shelf 3 is low on protein bars. And the emergency section is still a mess from yesterday's inspection. Thanks to you." I bit back the urge to tell him where he could shove his clipboard. "You reorganized it, Marcus." "I just put things where you told me." "Yes, and you did it badly," he said. "Fix it." "This is not some." He gestured vaguely, searching for the word. "This is not a shack on a beach somewhere. We are professionals." "Right?" I muttered. "Professionals selling instant ramen at the bottom of the ocean." He glared at me, but he didn't argue the point. He handed me a battered handheld scanner and pivoted on his heel with military precision. The store is small but deep. What the customers see is 3 short aisles and a counter. What they don't see is the back, a cavernous, low-ceiling storage space that takes up most of the module. Rows and rows of metal shelves loaded with vacuum-packed meals, water purification tablets, oxygen candles, med kits, boxes of basic tools, plus the usual crates of snacks and toiletries. Because we're isolated, the company treats us like a lifeboat. In case of supply chain disruption, This place is supposed to keep 87 people alive for 3 months. Marcus loves that. He walks up and down the aisles with a little smile like a dragon, counting coins. I went through the motions on autopilot. Check dates, skin stock, swap boxes from back to front, make a note of anything that needed reordering. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The air was colder in the storage area, the metal under my hands slick with condensation. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear the faint, low boom of something heavy shifting in another module. The morning rush came and went. 6 people, including a diver from engineering grabbing coffee, and 3 candy bars for a double shift topside. Marcus hovered at the counter, offering unnecessary commentary about my scanning speed, my posture, and the way I arranged the gum. It wasn't until the first quiet lull that I wandered to the far end of the storage room, where we keep the weird stuff. Row 13, bottom shelf, specialty diet items and pet supplies. The last time I've been back there was when I unpacked the last supply shipment 2 weeks ago. I remember because Marcus had stood in the doorway complaining about the manifest. "We don't need this," he'd said, tapping the box of dog food with his pen. "Waste of space. Waste of weight. The only reason we have to stock any damn dog food is because of Mrs. Innes in Module A. If she moves, I will personally flush the rest of this down the toilet." Mrs. Innes is on level 2, Module A, a retired hydrologist with arthritis and a loud laugh who smells permanently of menthol rub. She's also the only person in the complex actually allowed an animal, a small, ancient, company-approved therapy dog that mostly sleeps in her lap. There are no other dogs down here. I crouched down and ran my hand along the shelf. The metal was icy enough to sting. I found the box Marcus had bitched about, tore it open. Tins with generic labels. Canine Nutritional Unit, chicken flavor. 8 of them. I grabbed one, feeling the weight of it in my hand. My mind flickered back to my cabin, to white fur on my bunk, to a set of half-remembered conversations with Marcus. "You're the reason we have to stock that crap, you know. If you ever go topside," I'm dropping that line off the manifest so fast. Wait, had he said that? I tried to pin the memory down, and it skittered away like a fish in murky water. I could see his annoyed face, hear his voice, but when I looked closer, the scene fuzzed at the edges. I couldn't remember where we'd been standing, what I'd been doing, what day it was. Nothing to hook it on to. My heart gave an uncomfortable little flutter. I straightened up too fast, hitting my shoulder on the shelf above. Metal clanged. Something rattled down the line. "Everything all right back there?" Marcus called. "Fine," I said, rubbing the sore spot. "Just gravity. Try not to break the station," he said. "We're fresh out of replacements." I stared at the can of dog food in my hand. The plain printed label swam for a second. "You have a dog," I told myself. You have a dog." I pictured her, big, white, fluffy, tail like a feather duster. Always there when I woke up, nose in my face. The image came easily, with this heavy, syrupy feeling of comfort wrapped around it. What was her name? The question landed in my head like a dropped wrench. I froze. Of course I knew her name. I said it all the time. I called her across the cabin, whispered it when I woke up, wrote it on the damn form I must have filled out to get her here, on the list the company makes you complete when you bring anything extra down that might affect air or water or food. But when I reached for it, there was just nothing. Blank. White noise between my ears. "Fuck," I whispered. The more I tried to drag it out, the worse it got. My memory looped back on itself, running the same images. Her on the bunk. Her at the viewport. Her trotting after me with her tongue out. Each one came with that same overwhelming sense of familiarity, that deep-boned certainty that she belonged there. But no name attached itself. Not even a wrong one. Just static. I stood there, staring at the tin of dog food, until Marcus's voice cut through. "Break," he said sharply. 15 minutes. If you stay past your slot again, I'll mark it on your file." "Go." "Right," I said. My throat felt tight. "Yeah, I'm going." I took the can with me. Marcus eyed it as I passed the counter, narrowing his eyes, but he didn't say anything. The main hub was busier by then. A couple of engineers heading to the pump module, talking in low voices about turbine noise. One of the kids from the schoolroom kicking a ball against the wall until a security officer told him to cut it out before he cracked something. I nodded at the ones I knew, head down, fingers gripping the can so hard the edge bit into my palm. The corridor back to level 5 felt longer than usual. The hum of the circulation fans was loud enough to vibrate in my teeth. At the door to my cabin, I hesitated. The metal was cold under my hand. I could hear the faint hiss of my own breathing inside my skull, and underneath that, something else. A noise so soft I almost missed it, a wet, rhythmic sound, like something licking. I keyed to my code. The lock clicked and the door slid open. The cabin was exactly as I'd left it. Bunk unmade, mug on the little table, a pile of laundry overflowing from the fabric bag in the corner. The viewport was still a circle of blackness with a rim of condensation on the inside. One droplet hung motionless at the very bottom of the glass, fat and distorted, refusing to fall. On the couch, a thin pad of foam bolted to the wall under the viewport. The dog sat with her front paws planted square and her head tilted toward the screen on the opposite wall. The screen was on. I don't remember turning it on. Static snowed softly over some half-frozen frame of an old nature documentary. Blue-green water. Silver fish. A voiceover buzzed and cut. The dog glanced over as I stepped in, then launched herself off the couch with an enthusiasm that made her claws scrabble on the floor. She barreled into my legs, nearly knocking me over, whining happily. Her fur was damp and smelled faintly of salt and that weird popcorn smell that always made me think of movie nights topside. I staggered back, laughing despite the knot in my guts. Okay, easy, I said. You're gonna break my knees. Jesus. Her heart thumped against my fingers. Warm, solid, real. The unease receded just like that. It was hard to hang onto irrational fear when something you love is pressing against you. So, clearly not a threat. You hungry? I asked. The word made her head jerk up. She panted, tongue lolling, tail wagging, that familiar little spark of dog food rage in her eyes. I took that as a yes. In the galley, I grabbed the tin opener and worked it around the lid. The metal squealed. A rich, meaty smell rose up, undercut by the faint tang of preservatives. My stomach did a little roll. The station's food is all metal and plastic and salt. The scent of meat is always slightly wrong. The dog danced in place by the counter, nails clicking, leaving little damp prints on the floor. Droplets shook loose from her fur and spattered my bare ankles, colder than they should have been. I poured the food into the mixing bowl I'd used for water. She dove in the second it hit the bottom, wolfing it down with noisy enthusiasm. The bowl scraped against the floor as she pushed it. I leaned against the counter and watched her. Halfway through, she lifted her head and looked up at me, muzzle slick, eyes full of pure, uncomplicated joy. It hit me so hard in the chest, I almost forgot to breathe. I gotta get back, I said when she'd licked the bowl so clean it squeaked. If I'm late, Lynn's gonna have a heart attack just so he can guilt me with it forever. She snorted, nose in the bowl, hunting for any last molecule of food. I glanced at the time on the wall display. Break was already half gone. I'll come back on lunch, I promised. I bent down and pressed my forehead briefly against hers. Her fur tickled my skin. Her breath was hot and smelled like the food. We'll go walk the spine. You can pretend you're on the surface or something. She thumped her tail and made a small, pleased whine. I took that as understanding. I stepped back into the corridor, hit the door control, and listened to it seal. The lock thump home. The hum of the station folded back over me. I got as far as the elevator before it hit me. I was standing there, watching the floor numbers flicker above the doors, when my brain tossed the question up again. What is your dog's name? My mouth went dry. I tried to answer out loud, to force it. Her name is, I said. The elevator doors slid open. I stepped inside, hit the button for level 4, and lean my head back against the cool metal wall. Her name is nothing, just static. My tongue pushed against my teeth like the word was there, stuck somewhere behind them, but it wouldn't come out. I thought about the first day I'd brought her down, filling out the forms. Marcus bitching about the extra load. Mrs. Innes telling me quietly that it made a difference having something warm and stupid to talk to. I pictured all of it in detail. The cramped surface prep room, the smell of diesel and sea spray, the way the winch squealed as they lowered the cargo container. When I tried to see her file, the digital form on the company's system with her name in block letters, it fuzzed. The screen in my mind went gray. Error. Her name is... I tried again, whispering now. Come on, say it. Her name is... By the time the elevator shuddered to a stop at level 4, my hands were shaking. I stood there with my finger hovering over the emergency intercom, breathing too fast, listening to the faint creaks and groans of the station around me. The doors rattled open. The smell of stale coffee washed over me again, familiar and grounding. Get a grip, I told myself. You're fucking losing it over a blank word. Stress. That's all. You've been doing double shifts. That's what Agnes was smiling about. You're walking around half asleep. I forced my legs to move. When I stepped back into the store, the first thing I noticed was the silence. The second was that Marcus wasn't there. He never, ever left the store unattended. If he had to pee, he dragged one of us to stand at the counter while he went. He took his breaks sitting on a stool behind the register, slurping instant noodles and giving a running commentary on my work ethic. Now the stool was empty. The register was unmanned. The little swinging half door you go through to get behind the counter was ajar. Marcus, I called. No answer. I went behind the counter, half expecting him to jump out from under it and yell at me about security protocols. Nothing. His clipboard lay on the countertop. On top of it was a piece of lined notepaper torn from the stock book, folded in half. My name was written on the front in his neat, precise handwriting. The knot in my stomach twisted tighter. I picked it up, unfolded it. Gone home for lunch. Spending the hour with my wife. Do not touch the emergency stock. M. Lynn. I read the note 3 times. Lynn lives in a cabin on level 3, Module B. I've been there once when we did a stock take of the personal lockers. I remember it being tidy, sparse, like a showroom. 1 bunk, 1 chair, 1 photo of his parents on the wall. No extra toothbrush in the bathroom. No shoes by the door that weren't his. No second mug. Marcus Lynn is not married. The edges of my vision tightened. My head felt like someone had crammed it with wet cotton. I leaned both elbows on the counter, the cheap laminate digging into my forearms, and tried to breathe. The hum of the refrigerators, the flicker of the fluorescent lights, the distant clang of something in the hub, all of it faded under a rush of blood in my ears. I thought about Agnes and her son. I thought about Marcus and his wife. I thought about my dog, nameless and warm and so familiar it hurt. Outside the store, down the curve of the hub, I heard a dull, hollow knock. Just once, somewhere deep in the wall, like something heavy had hit the hull from the outside. Nobody else reacted. A couple of kids laughed as they ran past. A security officer leaned against a support pillar, checking something on his tablet. The speaker above the rec room door crackled with the start of some old song. My fingertips tingled. I replayed my whole morning in my head, over and over, as if there was a loose frame I could catch. Waking up with her weight on my legs. Her smell, the cold of her nose, her watching the viewport, the missing dog food, Agnes's smile, the conversation with Marcus that may or may not have happened, the way my brain skipped over the name like a scratch disc. Why had I remembered her being white and fluffy? There was no doubt in my mind about that part. Not like a dream where faces shift. That detail was bright and sharp. But standing there in the store, staring at the black smudges of Marcus's handwriting, I suddenly knew with a clarity that cut through the fog, that whatever was waiting for me in my cabin was not white. It was thin and gray and had sharp teeth. Something knocked again, faint and patient, somewhere deep in the bones of the station. And for the first time in months, I thought seriously about getting on the next rail car up and never coming back down. I didn't quit. I should have. I should have gone straight to the rail lock, hit the call button, and ridden that rattling coffin of a car all the way back to light and sky and waves. But I didn't. You don't just leave down here. You don't abandon a shift and your bunk and your routines over something as stupid as a feeling. People crack under pressure at sea all the time. You suck it up, or they send you topside for evaluation, and then you don't get to come back. And I wanted to stay. That's the part one hate admitting. I wanted to stay because of the thing in my cabin. The rest of that shift crawled. My hands knew what to do: stack, scan, ring up, smile. But the rest of me was floating somewhere else, replaying conversations that didn't line up with reality. Every time I tried to get a handle on what was wrong, that fog rolled in behind my eyes and turned everything syrupy. At some point, a diver from engineering came in, still half zipped in his dry suit, hood hanging down his back. He tossed a pack of cigarettes on the counter and asked for a lighter. "Thought Perez banned smoking outside the wreck," I said. He snorted. "Perez can suck my tank valve. I just did a 4-hour maintenance crawl in the intake. I earned this." "You find anything?" I asked, more sharply than I meant. His face twitched. "What, in the intake?" "Yeah." I tried to sound casual. "Any weird debris? Impacts? Cracks?" He gave me a long look. "We're sealed. If there was a crack, you'd be drowning right now instead of asking stupid questions." I mean, I groped for an excuse. "Sonar's been weird. Heard a couple of knocks earlier." "That's just the hull settling." He scratched at his jaw, leaving a smear of something dark on his skin. "Oil or algae? Hard to tell in this light. You hear stuff down here. Makes you jumpy if you let it." "Right," I said. "Yeah, jumpy." He studied me for another second. "You okay, man?" "Fiend it." He didn't believe me, but he collected his cigarettes and left without pressing. The half door swung shut behind him with a soft thud. I checked the time. 40 minutes until my lunch break. An entire fucking ocean of time. It felt like something was pulling at me. A tide. Every few seconds I'd think of going back to my cabin, and my chest would fill with this weird mix of dread and longing. Like I hadn't seen her in days, not an hour and a half. I told myself I'd spend the break in the mess instead. Drink coffee. Watch whatever ancient movie was looping on the communal screen. Stay in public spaces. Stay around other people. That resolve lasted exactly until the clock above the counter flipped to 12 o'clock and Marcus reappeared. He came through the back entrance, the one that links to the staff corridor. His hair was slightly mussed, which for him is like seeing the whole buckle. I smelled something floral on his clothes. Soap or perfume. His mustache twitched when he saw me. "You didn't touch the emergency stock," he said. It wasn't a question. "You told me not to," I said. "Good." He made a note on his clipboard. "Take your lunch. Mess is doing stew. Try not to fall asleep on your tray this time." It looks unprofessional. The words barely registered. I was staring at his collar. There was a hair stuck to it. Fine, long, and dark. Definitely not his. "Marcus," I said. He looked up, pen hovering. "What? You had a good lunch?" For a second, his face softened in a way I had never seen. Ever. It was like someone had turned a light on behind his eyes. "Yes," he said quietly. "I did. With your wife," I said. The light got brighter. His mouth twitched into something almost like a smile. "Yes, with my wife." "You don't have a wife," I said. It came out flat. Not accusing, just fact. The pen in his hand froze. That glow in his expression flickered, then flared. For a moment, I thought he was about to hit me with the clipboard. Instead, he leaned over the counter until we were almost nose to nose. "Do not," he said, voice steady but way too quiet. "Tell me what I do and do not have." I swallowed. "Marcus, we've worked together for 3 years. You've never mentioned. I am not required," he snapped, "to share my personal life with you. You've never brought anyone down." I pressed. "You're in a single cabin. We did the safety drill last month, remember? I had you manifest. Next of kin, mother, father. No spouse." His eyes glittered. I could see a vein pulsing in his temple. You misread it, he said. Go eat, he said, before I write you up for insubordination instead of tardiness. I stood there, vibrating with adrenaline, pulse hammering against my tongue. Part of me wanted to keep pushing, to make him say it out loud, to watch whatever crack was forming widen. The rest of me was very aware that he could make my life down here hell with one email. Fine, imaterd. I'm going. I stepped out from behind the counter, the store suddenly feeling too small, too bright. The hum of the freezers buzzed under my skin. As I crossed the threshold into the corridor, I heard Marcus chuckle softly behind me. You should be happy for people, you know, he called. You're too cynical. That's why you're alone. His words followed me all the way to the spine. I didn't go to the mess. My feet turned toward the level 5 ladder before my brain could argue. Each rung was slightly damp, cold metal biting through the thin gloves I'd forgotten to take off since a shift in the freezer last week. Condensation dripped on my neck from a pipe. Somewhere above, someone laughed, the sound bouncing weirdly off the curved walls. The closer I got to my module, the stronger that stupid warmth in my chest got. It felt like walking toward a heater after an ice bath, toward light after a long tunnel, toward family, a treacherous little voice suggested. Shut up, I told myself. Outside my door, I paused again. The bulkhead hummed faintly under my palm, vibration from the pump station bleeding into the structure. I pressed my ear to it. Nothing at first. Then, faintly something else. Not the station, a softer sound, almost below hearing. A slow, wet dragging, like someone pulling a heavy, soaked blanket across the floor. My throat went dry. My fingers hovered over the keypad. You don't have to go in. I thought. You could turn right now, go to security, tell them everything, make them open the manifest, show you the logs. You could go to the doctor. You could. From inside the cabin, just on the edge of hearing, I caught a soft, muffled bark. That was it. Every rational argument in my head drowned under the flood. I punched in my code and shoved the door open. She was there, of course. She'd been there the whole time, sitting in front of the viewport, head cocked, watching the dark. When the door slid open, she spun, tail whipping hard enough to smack the wall, and bounded toward me. Wave of relief. Physical, almost painful, like decompressing too fast. There you are. I exhaled. She crashed into my thighs, mouth open in that stupid dog grin, and I went to my knees without thinking, burying my fingers in her fur. It was damp and thick, the curls springy between my hands. Her tongue swiped over my cheek once, warm and rough. For a few seconds, everything else evaporated. Agnes, Marcus, the missing wife, the non-existent son, all of it dropped away like silt. There was only this cramped cabin, the smell of recycled air and dog, the creak of the station, and this ridiculous animal pressed against me like I was the only thing in the world that mattered. I don't know how long I stayed like that. Long enough for my knees to start aching against the metal. Long enough that my lunch break was burning away. It took effort, actual physical effort, to pull back. When I did, something tugged at the edge of my perception, like a snagged thread. For half a second, just as I leaned away, I saw something else. Not fur, not white, gray, skin, smooth and almost translucent, stretched too tight over something that wasn't quite bone. Fingers, too long, too many, resting lightly on my thighs. A mouth too wide, curling back to reveal rows of small, needle-sharp teeth. The image flickered and snapped away like a faulty projection. My stomach lurched. I blinked hard, heart jackhammering, and there she was again, big, fluffy, white, panting happily. Fuck, I whispered. I scrambled to my feet so fast I made myself dizzy. The dog, no, the thing, watched me, head tilted. For a heartbeat, its eyes looked wrong. Too dark, too deep, like holes punched into its skull. Then they slipped back to that soft brown. My pulse pounded in my ears loud enough to drown out the station hum. I backed toward the door, never taking my eyes off it. Her, it, whatever. She whined once, confused. Took a step toward me, nails tapping. From somewhere beyond the cabin, deep in the structure, came a sound. Not the usual low creaks, not a pump starting up. A single, distinct ping, like sonar but wrong. Too drawn out. The echo of it seemed to vibrate in my teeth, then fade. The dog's ears flicked toward the bulkhead. For the first time since I'd met her, she looked away from me like something else had her attention. Her nose wrinkled. Her lips twitched back, just a little, like she was smelling something unpleasant. My hand slapped the door control. The panel slid shut between us. I heard her claws scratch once at the metal, a soft, uncertain sound, before the lock engaged with a heavy clunk. I leaned my forehead against the cool steel and tried not to throw up. The knock came then, clearer this time. Not a ping, an actual knock. 3 slow, measured taps that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. I flinched back. The overhead light flickered just once, then steadied. "Okay," I muttered. "Okay, you're losing it. You're fucked." Someone cleared their throat behind me. Ispoon. Rafi was standing at the junction of the corridor, hands in his pockets, watching me with that half-amused, half-concerned expression he always wore when I was doing something weird. Rafi works in security, which in a place like this mostly means manning cameras, running drills, and breaking up arguments in the rec room when someone loses at cards. He's also one of the few people down here I'd call an actual friend. "You practicing headbutts on your door now?" he said. "That a new fitness routine I missed?" I laughed too high, just testing the seal. "Sure." He took a few steps closer. The overhead light made the damp on his shaved scalp shine. "You look like shit, man. You sick? I'm fiending." He eyed me. "That what Agnes said when you crawled past sick bay?" "I didn't go to sick bay." "Yeah, no kidding." He jerked his thumb at my door. "You hiding your stash in there or something?" "My what?" "Booze. Contraband. Illicit surface snacks. Whatever's making you this jumpy." I almost said it. The words rolled up my throat and sat there. There's something in my cabin. A thing that looks like a dog but isn't. People are talking about family they don't have. There's knocking outside the hall. What came out instead was, "You hear anything weird this morning?" He snorted. Define weird. Perez tried to run a safety briefing in Spanish and Norwegian at the same time. That was pretty weird. I mean over comms. Or on the hull. Any odd sonar hits. He sobered a little. "Oh, that kind of weird." "Yeah." He looked past me at my door like he could see through it. "Heard a couple anomalies on third watch," he said finally. Perez logged it as ice sloughing off the upper section. "There's no ice this far down," I said automatically. "I know that," he said. "You know that." Perez knows that. But the note says probable ice, and the system's happy. You know how it is. What did it sound like? He shrugged, like something big dragging along the hull. Twice. Long intervals. Could be a current shift. Could be a chain on one of the old anchor points that worked loose. Could be nothing. We're not a fucking submarine, man. We creak. What about knocks? I asked. Like someone tapping. 3 times. Slow. He watched me for a second. Really watched me. "No," he said. "And if you're hearing that, you should talk to Pyre. Or Agnes. Hallucinations in a pressure environment are not something you ignore." "It's not." I started, then stalled. "It's not like that." "What's it like then?" I swallowed. My mouth tasted like metal. "You ever forget something you shouldn't be able to forget?" I asked. "Not like where you put your keys. Something big, like a whole person." He went still. "I forget shit constantly," he said lightly. "That's what backups are for." "I don't mean files, I gestured vaguely. "Okay, let's say tomorrow I tell you you've got a wife." He snorted. "Doi. Is she hot?" "Fuck off. I'm being serious." Okay. He held up his hands. "Go on. Let's say you start talking about her," I said. "Like you've had her for years. You're telling people what she cooked you, how she nags you about leaving socks in the sink, whatever. You're smiling like an idiot. But everyone else knows you live alone. Your manifest says single. No one's ever seen this woman. And then when someone calls you on it, you get pissed. Like really pissed. Like they're insulting her. Sounds like a me problem," he said. "Or a tumor." And then I pushed. You go home, and there she is, in your cabin. And when you look at her, you feel good, happy, warm, like all your stress just bleeds out. But every time you try to remember how it started, your brain blanks. You know what I'm saying? He stared at me for a long, quiet moment. The hum of the air system filled the gap. That's very specific, he said finally. I rubbed my hands over my face. They were damp. I didn't remember touching anything wet. Forget it, I muttered. He sighed. Look, you've been pulling doubles, right? Marcus mentioned it. Of course he did. And you haven't taken a surface break in, what, 6 months? 5. He tilted his head. 5 months breathing the same air, staring at the same walls, listening to the same noises. People start seeing patterns, hearing voices and pump noises, naming the creaks. This isn't that. Maybe it is, he said. Maybe it isn't. Either way, go talk to Pyre. We got protocols for this. Last thing we need is someone losing their shit and opening a valve they shouldn't. Yeah, I said. Right. He clapped me on the shoulder. His hand was warm through my shirt. You missed the surface? He asked, more gently. Yes, I said before I could stop myself. Then book a trip, he said. You're not in prison. Take the rail up, spend a week in some shitty coastal hotel, get drunk on real air. He glanced at my door one more time. Whatever you're doing in there, don't let it replace everything else. He walked away then, down the curve of the corridor, whistling off-key. The sound bounced weirdly and died. I stood there until my lunch break was almost over, then dragged myself back to the store. The rest of the shift blurred. People came and went. I rang things up and handed out change like a machine. At some point, Agnes walked past with a small hand in hers. I only caught a glimpse. A boy, maybe 8 or 9, in an oversized station hoodie and socks, hair sticking up like he'd just gotten out of bed. His hand in hers looked slick, dark, like it was wet all the way to the wrist. When I blinked, it was just a kid. Dark hair, pale face, yawning hugely. Agnes caught my eye over his head and smiled that new, soft smile. Something in the back of my head shivered. I didn't sleep that night. I went back to my cabin after shift with my heart banging like a fist against my ribs, half expecting the door to refuse my code, half expecting, I don't know, teeth. She met me at the door again, tail wagging, tongue lolling. The TV was on, tuned to the station's internal camera feed. View from the external hull cam, black water, the faint outline of the structure lit by infrared. Hi, I said hoarsely. She whuffed softly, like she was trying to speak. When I stepped inside, she pressed herself against me, crowding me backward until the door sealed shut again. I let her. It was easier than resisting. We ended up on the bunk. At some point I must have changed, but I don't remember doing it. I remember her weight stretched along my side, the warmth seeping into me. I remember the sound of the circulation fans, the slow creak of the structure settling, the occasional soft ping of something on the hull. I remember feeling content, like all the edges inside me had been sanded down. The knot of anxiety loosened to nothing. The knocking I'd heard earlier receded like a far-off storm. I woke up once in the middle of the night cycle to darkness and cold. The dog was still there, curled into a tight ball against my legs. The emergency light above the door glowed a faint red, just enough to sketch outlines. My mouth tasted like salt and metal. My tongue felt thick. I lifted my head a little, wincing at the ache in my neck, and looked toward the viewport. There was water on the inside, not condensation, not little droplets forming in a ring. A sheet. It clung to the glass, perfectly smooth, like I was looking at the bottom of a still pond. Something moved in it, just under the surface, a long, pale shape coiling lazily. I couldn't see its head, just the curve of its body. I blinked. When my eyes opened again, the glass was dry. Just the usual circle of darkness. My heart was beating so hard it hurt. I considered getting up, turning on the main light, calling Rafi, calling Pyre, hitting the general alarm, and making everyone gather in the hub so I could show them the impossible water. Then the dog shifted, pressing closer, and this bone-deep laziness washed through me. I closed my eyes. My hand slid down automatically, fingers burying in her fur. When the morning cycle buzzer buzzed faintly through the bulkhead, I sat up fast like someone had pulled a string. She was lying across my feet, exactly as she had when I'd fallen asleep. The emergency light was off. Normal white light filtered through the vent slats, giving everything that washed out underwater lab look. The viewport was normal, dry, black. A tiny droplet hung at the bottom, wobbling. I swung my legs out of bed, feet hitting cold metal. My head throbbed. "You're messing with me," I told her. She tilted her head. One ear flopped comically. I showered, dressed, and left without feeding her. I told myself that would be a test. When I stepped into the corridor, the air felt heavier. People moved slower. There was a buzz among the residents that wasn't the usual background gossip. In the hub, a knot of workers stood around the central display pillar. The screen showed a schematic of the station. All the modules and corridors laid out like a cutaway. One section near the upper end of the rail tunnel blinked amber. "Pressure variance," someone was saying. "Probably just a sensor fault." Yeah, that's what they said last time until we had salt water pissing through the ductwork on level 2. "Shut up, Leo." I pushed through until I could see the text under the blinking section. External anomaly detected. Hull integrity, nominal. Pressure, nominal. Investigation, pending. Perez, our chief of maintenance, stood with his arms crossed, jaw clenched. He's one of those guys who looks born to wear a hard hat. Even without one, you can picture it. "Everything good?" I asked him. He grunted. "Just the system being dramatic." "Ember's not dramatic? If it was serious, it'd be red," he said. "We had a glitch like this 2 years ago. Some idiot torpedo exercise too close to our zone. Shook the outer shell. Nothing breached, nothing cracked. Just made the sensor sweet piss itself." "Torpedoes?" I said. "We're not in a war zone. Try telling that to the Navy." He rubbed the bridge of his nose. "We'll send a drone. Crawl over that section. But until then, nobody goes near the tunnel without my say-so." "Understood." The small crowd muttered assent and drifted away. I stared at the schematic a little longer. The blinking amber section sat exactly where the main rail tube left the main structure and angled up toward the surface. The only way out. Something was wrong up there. Of course it was. Why wouldn't it be? The day bled into another blurry mess of receipts and small talk. More people came through the store with that same strange glow in their eyes, talking about people they shouldn't have. A guy from hydroponics mentioned his little sister coming to live with him next month. One of the engineers asked if we had any kid shampoo because his daughter hates the regular stuff. "Didn't know you had kids," I said. He looked at me like I was the crazy one. "Of course I do. Don't you remember? I showed you pictures." If he had, I didn't remember. All I could picture was that same thin, gray shape pinned into different silhouettes. By mid-shift, my nerves were shredded. Every time the overhead speaker popped, I jumped. Every time the hull creaked, I thought I heard that deliberate knock hiding under it. I lasted until first lull, then cracked. "I need 5 minutes," I told Marcus. He barely glanced up. "You just took your break." "I need another. Bathroom." He opened his mouth to argue, then caught whatever was on my face and shut it again. 3 minutes, he said. "And if you puke on my floor, you're cleaning it." "Deal," I muttered and headed straight for the security module. Most people don't like going in there. It feels like being watched, even when you're alone. Racks of monitors showing every corridor, every module, every doorway. Logs of when you came and went. Records of your life in pixels and timestamps. Rafi was at the main console, boots up on an empty chair, watching 2 screens at once. One showed the blinking amber section of the hull schematic. The other showed the external drone feed, crawling along the outside of the rail tunnel in real time. "Hey," I said. He glanced over, then did a double take. "You look worse than you did yesterday." "Thanks. Want me to write you a testimonial?" "My friend looks like shit. Send help." "Pull my cabin feed," I said. His eyebrows crawled up. "Excuse me. External." I added quickly. Not inside. I know you're not supposed to be watching people sleep or whatever. Just the hallway. The door. You having trouble with your lock? No. Ishualuba. I want to see who's been going in. Rafi studied me for a second, then swung his boots down and typed something. One of the monitors flicked from the view of the mess hall to a grainy image of the level 5 corridor outside my cabin door. There you go, he said. Last 24 hours. We watched in silence. There was me leaving for shift. There was Rafi walking up and talking to me in the corridor. There was me coming back at lunch. Me leaving again. A couple of kids racing past, whacking on doors. A maintenance tech doing a round, scanner in hand. No one else. You see something I don't? Rafi asked. Inside, I said. Can you pull interior? He hesitated. You know, that's not generally considered cool, right? I know. I don't care. Please. He frowned but typed again. The view changed to the inside of my cabin. The camera is in the corner above the door, wide-angle, fisheye lens. It made the space look even smaller and more warped than it actually is. The bunk, the viewport, the little table, the couch. My breath hitched. The dog wasn't there. There was something in the cabin, but it wasn't a dog. Thin, gray, arms like wet ropes, hands splayed on the floor. Its spine arched in a way no spine should. It sat hunched by the viewport, facing away from the camera, head almost touching the glass. As we watched, the door opened. I came in, blurred around the edges by compression artifacts. The thing didn't turn. I walked right past it, not even glancing in its direction. My stomach dropped. Wait, I said. Go back. Rafi rewound a few seconds. We watched it again. Me entering. The thing, unmoving. Me looking down and laughing. Reaching out. My hand passing through empty air from the camera's perspective to stroke nothing. What the fuck, I whispered. On screen, I crouched. My hand moved in slow, affectionate arcs over empty floor. My face had that slack, stupid look people get when they're in love with something. My mouth moved. Words the camera couldn't pick up. The thing shifted then, only a little. Its neck elongated, vertebrae popping under the skin. Its head turned toward me. The camera didn't catch its face. Just the angle, the impossibility of it. The way its shoulders didn't move with the head. Stop, I said. Rafi froze the frame. The thing hung there mid-turn. Jesus, he breathed. That's what I'm talking about, I said. My voice shook. That's what's in my cabin. He stared at the screen for a full 10 seconds. You see the logs on this feed? He asked, weirdly calm. What? There's a header. He tapped the top of the monitor. Kam cinczka bin doisprezice. Status. Active. Feed. Internal. Filter. How what? He zoomed in on the header. The little text read, Perception Adjustment. Enabled. I didn't even know we had that, he said. Perception adjustment, I repeated. What does that mean? Some kind of auto mask, he said slowly. We use similar tech topside in public cams. It blurs faces sometimes. Hides certain, privacy stuff. Maybe they installed a version for the living modules. Filters out private behavior. Is that what it looks like to you? I hissed, pointing at the frozen, writhing shape. Privacy behavior? He flinched. I'm just saying I've never seen that tag. Turn it off, I said. Whatever it is, turn it off. He chewed his lip. If it's hardwired, I can't. Rafi. He sighed and typed something else, fingers flying. The header flickered. The perception adjustment line turned red, then disappeared. The image didn't change. The thing in my viewport remained exactly as it was. Thin. Wrong. Head half turned, neck too long. In the next frame, when the footage moved again, it turned all the way to look directly at the camera. The feed pixelated for a moment, like it was struggling to render the face. Then it resolved. Empty sockets. Not holes, just absence. Like someone had erased the eyes. A mouth that took up half its head, full of tiny, needle-like teeth. In the footage, I reached out and scratched somewhere midair, smiling. Fuck me, Rafi whispered. He hit stop like the keyboard was burning him. You see it too, I said. I'm not blind, he snapped. What the fuck is that? That's what I've been sleeping next to. He went a little green. You told anyone else? He asked. Who the fuck am I supposed to tell? I shot back. Agnes and her imaginary kid? Marcus and his invisible wife? Perez, who thinks the whole anomaly is ice? He scrubbed his hands over his face. Okay, we need to think. The overhead speaker crackled then, making both of us jump. Attention all personnel, Perez's voice boomed. We are entering precautionary lockdown until further notice. Repeat, precautionary lockdown. Non-essential movement between modules is restricted. All residents report to your assigned areas. This is not a drill. Rafi swore. Perfect timing. Lockdown for what? I asked. He flicked his mouse to another monitor. The external feed. The drone had reached the amber section. The view showed the rail tunnel from outside. A long, cylindrical tube emerging from the main body of the station and angling up into darkness. The floodlights mounted on the drone cast a harsh cone of light on the hull. The metal looked wrong. Not cracked, not dented, bulged, like something inside was pressing outward. Long, irregular ridges pushed against the steel from within like fingers. Between them, the metal had stretched thin. As we watched, one of the ridges moved. Christ, I muttered. The amber on the schematic flickered brighter. This is when we call the company, right? I said, we report a major structural anomaly. Request immediate evacuation. To where? Rafi snapped. The tube is the only way up. If that thing ruptures at depth, anyone in that car is paced. So we sit here and wait until it fucking eats through? He didn't have an answer. On the external feed, something else happened. A ripple passed along the bulge. Not from outside, inside. The metal flexed. The drone feed juddered as if something had hit it. For a second, the image went to static, then came back. The bulge was closer. The drone hadn't moved. Nope, Rafi said. Nope, not dealing with that. That's engineering's problem. I do cameras and drunks. The overhead speaker crackled again. Security to level 2, came a different voice. Perez, tense. We've got a situation in module. Bring restraints and med support. Rafi winced. Restraints? I heard, I said. Stay here, he told me. Do not go back to your cabin. Do not open that door. Rafi, I'm serious, man. I've got to respond to this. You lock yourself in the security module if you have to. At least here we can see what's coming. He grabbed his belt, snapped his sidearm, holster shut. We call them guns, but they're more like glorified beanbag shooters, and jogged out. The door hissed shut behind him, leaving me alone with the screens. I lasted maybe 30 seconds before I started pacing. Every instinct screamed at me to go to Module A. That's where Mrs. Innes lives. The only person on base who actually has a legitimate dog. A real one. The first time I met her, she'd put the tiny, ancient creature in my arms and told me, voice trembling, about how the company had finally approved her to bring him down. How he helped with her panic attacks. How just having him on her lap made the claustrophobia bearable. If something was happening in her module, I had a pretty good guess it wasn't a busted pipe. I flicked through the cameras until I found level 2, Module A. The corridor outside, Mrs. Innes's door, was chaos. 2 security officers, one of them Rafi, were pressed against the bulkhead on either side of the hatch. Dr. Pyre stood a few feet back, med bag open at his feet, mask hanging around his neck. His eyes were wide behind his glasses in a way I didn't like. The camera didn't have audio, but I could see their mouths moving. Rafi said something, then reached forward and hit the door control. The hatch slid open a crack, and then slammed the rest of the way back on its own. Something hit it from inside. The security officer nearest the door yelped and jumped back. Rafi shoved his arm in the gap. For a second, it looked like the door was going to crush his forearm, but then the resistance gave and the panel opened fully. The thing that came out was not Mrs. Innes. It was taller. Too tall. Thin, of course. Gray. Its limbs seemed to unfold from itself, dripping something dark that steamed when it hit the cooler air of the corridor. The camera glitched. 4-3 frames. It looked like something else. A woman in an old sweater clutching a small dog to her chest. Then the filter broke, or the perception tag failed, and all that was left was the thing. Its mouth opened, rows of those teeth, its jaw unhinged like a snake's. Rafi raised his weapon and fired. The beanbag round hit the creature's chest with enough force to knock a human flat. The thing staggered, bent around the impact as if it were made of rubber, then straightened again. It reached for him. I slapped the intercom panel with a sweaty palm. Security, a bored voice said, "State your emergency." "Your emergency is in front of Mrs. Innes's cabin," I snapped. "Module, hey, look at your own feed." Silence. Then, oh shit. On the screen, Pyre grabbed the second security officer and yanked him back. Rafi dove sideways as the thing's hand scythed through the space where his head had been. Its fingers cut a groove in the bulkhead, leaving wet streaks that smoked. It stepped into the corridor fully, ducking under the doorframe. Behind it, in the cabin, I saw a flash of white. Something small and fluffy curled on the bunk, tail thumping once. He swallowed bile. The image warped again. For a heartbeat, to the camera, the creature looked like a young woman clinging to a little girl. Then the tagline on the feed blinked red and vanished. Perception adjustment disabled. I didn't know if Rafi had done that or if the system had given up. Either way, whatever flimsy mask these things had was slipping. The struggle in the corridor escalated. Rafi fired again, aiming lower this time. The round caught the creature in the leg. It buckled, one knee hitting the floor, hand splayed to catch itself. Where its palms slapped the metal, it left a splash of water. Not blood, water. It steamed, then ran toward the nearest seam and vanished through it. "Fuck," I whispered to the empty room. The speakers crackled with urgent chatter now. Overlapping voices calling for containment, for welders, for lockdown of modules A and B. I stood there, feeling utterly useless, watching my friend fight for his life on a screen. The creature lunged again, impossibly fast. Rafi dodged, but not fast enough. The tips of its fingers caught his arm. His sleeve shredded. A bright line opened in his skin, except it wasn't red. It was clear. Water spilled out of him. Not much. Enough to soak his sleeve. Enough to make him look down in disbelief. He hesitated, staring at his own arm. The creature took the opportunity. It grabbed him by the front of his vest and yanked him off his feet, dragging him toward the open cabin door. My hand was shaking so hard I could barely hold onto the edge of the console. "Come on," I breathed. "Come on, move." Another security officer barreled into frame from the right, tackling the thing around the waist. They hit the floor in a tangle of limbs. Pyre darted forward, grabbed Rafi by the back of his vest, and hauled him out of reach. Rafi's face had gone slack. For a second, it looked just like mine on the cabin footage, dazed, dreamy. He glanced back at the thing wrestling on the floor, and in that look I saw something that made my skin crawl. Love. Then Pyre slapped something onto his neck, an injector. Rafi flinched, blinked, and his expression snapped back to fear and fury. He scrambled to his feet, grabbed his fallen weapon, and fired point blank into the creature's head. The beanbag round hit its jaw with enough force to snap it sideways. Teeth flew. A spray of clear fluid arced out, hit the ceiling, and rained down in slow droplets. Where it landed, the paint bubbled and peeled. The thing spasmed, flailed once, then collapsed. Its limbs folded at angles that would have shattered human bones. It lay still. The picture glitched one more time. 4-3 frames. The body on the floor was a little dog lying on its side, chest still. Then it was just the thing. My knees gave out. I slid down the cabinet till I was sitting on the floor, the cold seeping through my pants. I don't know how long I sat there. Long enough for the feed to switch from live to a tiled NO signal pattern. Long enough for the overhead announcement to repeat the lockdown notice twice more. At some point, the security module door hissed open again. Rafi stepped in, jacket torn, sleeves soaked, a white bandage on his forearm. He looked 10 years older. "You saw that?" he asked. I nodded. "Your arm?" "It's fine," he said automatically. Pyre said it was superficial. "Looks worse than it is." "Looks like your blood turned into water," I said. He flinched. "Don't say it like that. What else do you call it?" He sank into the chair next to me. For a minute, we just listened to each other breathe, the hum of the equipment filling the spaces. "Mrs. Innes?" I asked finally. He swallowed. Pyre sedated her. She kept screaming at us. That we killed her baby. That we shot her daughter. Except there was no one else there. Just that. And the dog. His jaw tightened. Dead. Or whatever passes for dead with those things. We put in the isolation tank in Lab 2. Pyre wants to run tests. I want to put the whole module in a steel box and drop it in the trench. He scrubbed a hand over his face. "You see how she looked at it? She didn't see." He gestured vaguely. "She saw a kid. Her kid. She was hugging it when we got the door open. Wouldn't let go. Like a mask," I said. "Some kind of psychic camouflage." He gave me a look. "You've been reading the shitty sci-fi in a wreck again? You tell me a better explanation." He opened his mouth, then shut it. On one of the other monitors, the amber section of the hull schematic blinked a shade deeper. A new text line appeared under it. "Structural stress increasing. Recommended action. Evacuate." I laughed. It sounded cracked. "Great. We can't use the tube because the tube has that in it. We can't stay because the outside wants in. And inside we've got gray things pretending to be family." Rafi stared at the blinking text like he could cow it into stopping. "The company will send something," he said, but he didn't sound convinced. "An ROV at least. Maybe a salvage sub. How long will that take?" I asked. He didn't answer. We both knew. We're a tiny, old, barely profitable listening station turned hermit colony. They send us supplies once a month and maintenance specialists when they absolutely have to. If we go dark, we're a line in a log someone schemes over their morning coffee. On the cabin feed, the timestamp ticked forward. The last frame of the thing in my cabin hung frozen on the screen. "Waiting. You need to get out of that room," Rafi said abruptly. "That's your big idea?" I snapped. "No cheat. I mean it." He pushed himself to his feet, the movement slow, heavy. "Grab your essentials. Move into communal quarters. We'll seal your door, weld it if we have to. If that thing is anything like the one we just fought, you do not want to be alone with it when it decides to move." "What about everyone else?" I asked. "Everyone with a wife or a kid, or a whatever." "We can't drag 87 people out of their cabins in one go," he said. "Especially if half of them think we're attacking their loved ones. We'd have a riot. So we start with the ones we know are compromised," I said. "Agnes. Marcus. Me. Mrs. Innes. She's sedated," he said. "For now. Pyre's got her on a drip. When she wakes up," he trailed off. "You think he'll see it?" I asked. "Pyre. On the table. The thing. Or will he see a dog?" He didn't answer that either. "Come on," he said. "The more time you spend in there, the more whatever it does gets into your head. You already lost your dog's name." The way he said it made my skin crawl. "It never had a name," I said. "You sure about that?" I wanted to argue. I wanted to insist that if she'd been real, if any of this had been normal, I would have remembered something as simple as a name. Instead, I stood up on shaky legs and nodded. "Give me 5 minutes." "I'm coming with you," he said. We walked back to level 5 together. The corridors felt narrower. The air felt thicker. The overhead lights buzzed louder than they had yesterday. I noticed more little damp patches on the walls where condensation had collected and hadn't yet. Tiny beads of water clustering around seams, trembling. "Does it feel wetter in here to you?" I asked. Rafi snorted. "We live at the bottom of the ocean, man." "I mean more than usual," I said. "Like the station's sweating." He glanced at a rivulet creeping along a pipe. "Yeah," he admitted. "Yeah, it does." At my door, I punched in the code with clumsy fingers. "Ready?" he asked. "No," I said honestly, and opened it. The cabin smelled even more strongly of dog when we stepped in. Wet fur and stale kibble layered over the ever-present tang of metal and disinfectant. She was on the bunk, head on my pillow, eyes closed, breathing slow. She looked up as we entered, tail thumping. To me, anyway. I looked at Rafi. His face was blank. "You see it?" I asked. "See what?" he said. "The dog. On the bed." My voice wobbled. He frowned and looked around. His gaze passed right over the bunk, then did a double take. For a second, just one, his eyes widened. His pupils shrank. Then he blinked and his expression smoothed. "Dude," he said, "there's nothing there." The dog, thing, cocked its head, watching him. Its mouth opened in what, to me, looked like a yawn. It stretched, paws extending, claws clicking on the metal. In the reflection in the viewport, I saw something else. In the glass, there was no dog. Just a pale, elongated shape draped over the bunk, limbs spilling off the edge like strands of kelp. Its head turned toward the door. The mouth stretched too wide. Teeth. The light flickered. For a heartbeat, the real cabin and the cabin in the glass swapped. The thing on the bunk raised its head in both. "I see it," I whispered. Rafi glanced at me, then at the bed again. "Pack your stuff," he said. "I can't just leave it." "Yes, you can." The thing's ears, no, not ears, just flaps of skin where ears should be, twitched. It made a soft sound, not a bark, a wet, clicking noise. It sounded almost like my name. My knees went weak. "It knows me," I said. "It pretends to know you," Rafi snapped. "That's the point." It slid off the bunk. To me, it looked like a dog hopping down, tail wagging. In the viewport reflection, something boneless spilled onto the floor and flowed closer in a series of unsettling folds. My heart tripped. "It's coming," I said. Rafi stepped between me and it. "Back up." He put a hand out. It passed through where I saw its head. The thing hesitated, tilting invisibly around his fingers. He flinched, like he'd stuck his hand in lukewarm water. "What was that?" he hissed. "You felt it?" I asked. "Yeah," he said, "like condensation. Thick." The creature brushed against my leg. I almost collapsed with the flood of warmth that rolled through me. All the fear, all the panic, all the rational thought washed away for a second. I reached down automatically to stroke it. Rafi grabbed my wrist. Hard. "Hey," he snapped. "Stay with me." "I am," I said, but my voice sounded far away in my own ears. "Look at the glass," he said. I forced my eyes up. In the viewport, my reflection stood alone in the middle of the cabin, one hand stretched out to nothing. Right next to me, looming over my shoulder, the thing reared up, almost as tall as I was now. Its head hung inches from my neck. It opened its mouth. I couldn't hear it, not really, but feeling rolled over me. Love, comfort, safety, things I hadn't felt since before I moved down here. Childhood softness, warm blankets, a hand on my hair telling me everything was going to be okay. Tears pricked the corners of my eyes. Jesus hafi moterit. He sounded like he was 100 meters away. He let go of my wrist and stepped to the side, putting himself between me and the bed again. "Pack," he repeated, voice firm. "Now, essentials only. We're not coming back." "I can't just leave her," I said. The words came out without my permission. "She'll be alone." "That is not a she," he said through his teeth. "It is a fucking thing that sat in your cabin without you noticing it wasn't real." "How long has it been here?" "I don't," my head throbbed. "A while." "Exactly." I moved like I was underwater. Slow, heavy. Every step away from the creature hurt. It made these small, hurt noises, whimpering, and my chest squeezed. I grabbed my go bag from under the bunk, stuffed it with the basics. ID, a couple changes of clothes, my tablet, the photos I'd printed out of the surface, a packet of instant coffee I'd been hoarding. The thing followed me, weaving between my legs. In the glass, its limbs left smear marks on the floor. Wherever it touched, condensation bloomed. "Stay," I told it, voice shaking. "I'll be back." It made a sound that was so close to a question, it almost shattered me. Rafi put his hand on my back and steered me toward the door. His fingers were cold through the fabric. At the threshold, I looked back one last time. In my eyes, I saw my dog sitting in the middle of the cabin, tail sweeping, eyes huge and pleading. In the viewport, a pale shape clung to the walls and ceiling like a spider, head tilted, mouth a dark, gaping line. I hit the door control. The panel slid shut. Something hit it from the inside as soon as it sealed. Not hard, just a touch. The metal rang softly. A knock. 3 times. Slow. Patient. We stood there for a long moment, staring at the door. Security to level 5, came the overhead announcement. Security to level 5, Module D. Unauthorized hull access, attempt detected. Rafi swore. It never fucking ends. Go, I said. He hesitated. I don't want to leave you alone. I'm going to the communal dorm, I said. I'll be surrounded by people. I'll be fine. He didn't look like he believed that, but his radio crackled again, more urgent and duty one. Stay in public spaces, he said. If you start seeing things again, go to Pyre. Make him put you in a white room if he has to, right? And if anyone tells you they suddenly have a brother or a wife or a goldfish, walk the other way. I tried to smile. It felt brittle. He jogged off toward Module D. I leaned against the bulkhead, the cold metal seeping through my shirt, and listened. The knock came again. 3, then 3 more. Softer this time, like it was exploring the edges of the door. I pushed myself away and walked. The communal dorm felt like a refugee camp. It's just a larger cabin with 10 bunks and a shared wash area, usually used for visiting specialists or when someone's bunk floods. Now it was full of residents whose modules had been sealed off due to anomalies. Nobody said monsters. Mrs. Innes lay on one of the lower bunks, Fraulein taped to her arm, eyes closed. Agnes sat on the edge of another, hands folded in her lap, staring at nothing. Her cheeks were wet. You okay? I asked before I could stop myself. She turned her head slowly. They took him, she said. Your son, I said carefully. My boy, she said. He was frightened. They dragged him away. Said he wasn't real. Her voice broke on the last word. I swallowed. Agnes, there was nothing there. She smiled at me then, and it was the saddest thing I've ever seen. Of course there was, she said. You just can't see him. Not yet. She reached out and patted the air next to her, like she was smoothing a child's hair. I went and sat on an empty bunk in the corner and put my head in my hands. There's only so much you can take before your brain starts trying to protect itself. You dissociate. You crack jokes. You decide it's all a bad movie. I don't know how long we sat there. Time lost meaning. The overhead lights dimmed a little to simulate evening. The air got heavier. A faint mist formed near the ceiling. The station creaked more often. Deeper sounds now, not just the usual thermal expansion clicks. Long, resonant groans that felt like whale calls and made my teeth hurt. Every now and then, through the buzz of scared voices and the hiss of the air system, I heard it. That same slow knock, not just at my door anymore. Sometimes in the pipes, sometimes impossibly beneath the floor. Someone tried to make a joke about the base getting arthritis. Nobody laughed. At some point, Dr. Pyre came in. His hair stuck up in odd directions like he'd been running his hands through it. He had that brittle calm some doctors get when things are very, very wrong. He checked on Mrs. Innes, murmured to Agnes, then came over to me. You look like you haven't been sleeping, he said. Understatement, I muttered. He sat on the bunk opposite mine. The mattress spring squeaked. Security tells me you've been having unusual perceptual experiences, he said. Explain to me what you're seeing. I told him, not everything. I didn't mention the way the things love felt, the way I almost wanted to sink into it and never come back, but enough. The nameless dog, the missing memories, the cabin footage, the thing in my room. He listened without interruption, fingers steepled, eyes sharp behind his fog glasses. When I finished, he nodded slowly. You're not the only one, he said. What? We've had 8 reports of anomalous companions in the last 24 hours, he said. Spouses, children, pets. In each case, the individual is adamant the person or animal is real. They have memories of them, conversations, shared experiences, but those memories are inconsistent. They lack context. They're like inserts, like someone edited them in, I said. Exactly, he said. When we check objective records, manifests, logs, camera feeds, we find nothing. Or we find what you saw, something that isn't human, sitting where a human should be. He rubbed his eyes. We are under significant environmental stress, structural anomalies, isolation. It is possible this is some kind of collective psychosis, a pressure-induced hallucination. You don't believe that, I said. He hesitated. I would like to, he said, because if it's all in our heads, we can treat it. Drugs, therapy, evacuation. But the thing security fought in Module A left residue. It altered physical structures. It dented metal. Our imaginations don't do that. So what is it? I asked. Some deep-sea parasite? A pressure spirit? A glitch in reality? I don't know, he said simply. We have samples in the lab. They degrade quickly, turn to water and a small amount of particulate matter when removed from the host environment. Host environment, I repeated. You mean us? He sighed. We think it's using us. For what? I can't yet say. Shelter, maybe. Warmth. Structure. We're bags of water in a complicated cage. Convenient scaffolding. And the feelings? I asked. He looked uncomfortable. The brain is an electrochemical organ. It is susceptible to manipulation. These things may exude something. A field, a frequency, a song. A song, I said flatly. He shrugged. Call it whatever you like. We're not dealing with anything in the textbooks. A distant alarm hooped thin, a series of 3 descending tones. Not the fire alarm, not the drill. Pyre's head snapped up. That's hull level, he said. Section 3. The dorm went quiet. Everyone listened. The intercom popped. Attention, Perez's voice came tight. We have a breach in external shell near the upper rail junction. Inner hull is holding. Repeat, inner hull is holding. Pump systems engaged. All residents remain in assigned areas. This is under control. His hesitation did not inspire confidence. Pyre stood. I need to get back to the lab, he said. If these things are aquatic in nature, the breach may affect their behavior. You mean let more of them in, I said. He didn't contradict me. He left. The door sealed behind him with the heavy finality of a coffin lid. People around me started to murmur again. Someone cried quietly. Someone else paced, muttering prayers under their breath in a language I didn't recognize. I sat there and watched a droplet of water form on the ceiling above my bunk. It swelled slowly, pulling away from the metal without falling, growing bigger than surface tension should have allowed. It hung there, trembling. Inside it, for a heartbeat, I saw a tiny reflection of my own face, distorted and upside down. Behind me, in the droplet, something gray loomed. Don't, I whispered. The droplet shivered. It broke free, falling straight down. I flinched. It hit the pillow next to me and vanished, leaving a dark spot. I don't know when I fell asleep. At some point, exhaustion outweighed fear. My head hit the thin pillow and darkness rolled over me like a wave. I woke to chaos, shouting in the corridor, heavy footsteps, the hiss of doors opening and slamming. For a disorienting minute, I thought we were sinking. The floor felt like it was tilting. My stomach rolled. Then I realized it wasn't tilt, it was vibration. Something big was moving, somewhere very close. I swung my legs off the bunk. My feet hit water. Not much, just a thin, cold layer sloshing over the floor. Enough to soak my socks. My heart lurched. Everyone else in the dorm was awake too, perched on bunks or standing on tiptoe. The water barely came up past my ankles, but down here that's enough to be terrifying. Pipe burst, someone said. Has to be. They'll shut it off. Feels too cold, someone else muttered. I waded to the door. Rafi was in the corridor, panting, hair plastered to his head with sweat or water. It was hard to tell. What happened? I demanded. Hull breach spread, he said. Inner shells flexing. Pumps are barely keeping up. Some of the secondary seals are sweating. He nodded at the water. This isn't from inside. It's coming through. Through what? I asked. The walls. Microfractures, he said. Capillary action. I don't know. I'm not a fucking engineer. He grabbed my arm. His fingers dug into my skin. We've got them everywhere now, he said, voice low. Those things. People are refusing to leave their cabins. They're barricading themselves in with them. They think we're trying to kidnap their kids, their husbands, their pets. How many? I asked. He laughed, short and ugly. Too many. A third of the station, at least. Maybe more. It's like the longer you're with them, the harder it is to see around them. Then why can we? I asked. He looked away. I don't know. Maybe we're just broken in a different way. The floor shuddered. Far above, something boomed. The lights flickered, then dimmed to half brightness. Over the intercom, Perez's voice went from strained to outright panicked. Everyone to the hub, he barked. Now, we're abandoning outer modules. That's not a fucking suggestion. Move. The dorm emptied like someone had pulled a plug. People grabbed bags, shoes, each other. The corridor outside was ankle-deep in cold water now, tiny ripples forming where people sloshed through. We moved as a herd toward the hub. The hum of the station had gone deeper, more urgent. Pumps whining, fans straining. As we rounded the curve, I saw where the water was coming from. The big pressure bulkhead to the rail, tunnel sweated. Not condensation, actual flow. Tiny rivulets ran from the edges of the door, trailing down the metal. They merged into streams at the floor, trickling toward the drains that were never meant to handle this volume. The porthole in the center of the bulkhead was black as ever. For a second, though, I thought I saw movement, something pale gliding past on the other side of the thick glass. A knock rang through the metal, not the soft tap I'd heard at my cabin door. A deep, resonant boom that vibrated in my bones. People flinched. Someone screamed. Perez stood in front of the bulkhead, soaked to the knees, yelling orders none of us were really listening to. They want in, someone whispered behind me. They're already in, I said. Up on the ceiling, a droplet formed, swelled, and fell into the crowd. A woman under it gasped and clutched her head, eyes rolling back for a second. When she straightened, she smiled. I need to get back, she said dreamily. My husband's waiting. She turned and started walking against the flow, back toward the residential modules. Rafi moved to intercept her. Ma'am, you can't. She hissed at him. Actually hissed. Her eyes went glassy for a second, like she was looking through him. Don't touch me, she snapped. Don't you touch him. Two more people peeled off in her wake, mumbling about kids, about dogs, about parents. Each of them entered the shallower water without a flinch, wading back toward their cabins like sleepwalkers. We couldn't stop them all. Perez tried. Security tried. People shoved back, yelled. One guy swung at a guard when they grabbed his arm. The guard slipped in the water and went down hard, skull cracking against the wall with a sickening thud. For a moment, everything teetered on the edge of a full riot. Then the lights went out. Not all of them. Emergency strips along the floor kicked on, glowing dim red. Enough to see shapes. Enough to turn everyone into silhouettes. In the deep red gloom, the water on the floor glowed faintly. Little points of light shimmered in it, like bioluminescence. They drifted, flocking to people's ankles, swirling around their feet. I stood very still. Don't move, I whispered. Rafi's hand found mine in the dark. We clung to each other like kids in a storm. From the bulkhead, through the thick steel, through the trickle of water, came a sound. Not a knock, not a ping. It was singing, not in any language, not words, just a long, low note that rose and fell in a pattern that made my heart ache. It felt like being called home, like hearing your name said in a voice you hadn't heard in years. Around us, people relaxed. Some of them smiled. In the red light, the expressions looked wrong. Too slack, too peaceful. I heard someone say, Mom, in a small, disbelieving voice. Do you hear that? Agnes whispered beside me. Her eyes shone. He's out there. He's scared. She took a step toward the bulkhead. Agnes, no, I said, grabbing her sleeve. She shook me off with surprising strength. "I'm not leaving him out there alone," she snapped. "You don't understand. You never had kids." The song rose. It vibrated through my chest, making my ribs hum. My knees wanted to buckle in prayer. In that moment, I understood why sailors used to throw themselves overboard for sirens. It wasn't sex. It wasn't even beauty. It was relief. The promise that if you just went a little deeper, if you just let go, all the aches in your mind would stop. The floor water rose. It was up to my shins now, cold enough to make my muscles cramp. The bioluminescent flecks spiraled higher, tracing patterns around people's legs. "You have to stop this," I told the water. It felt stupid talking to it, but whatever was singing was in there somewhere. In the pipes, in the microfractures, in the spaces between molecules. "We're not yours," I said. My voice shook, but I made it loud. "We're not your fucking shells." My words went nowhere, eaten by the hum. Beside me, Rafi leaned close. "What do you fight a song?" he whispered. "Turn it off," I said. He looked at me. "What?" "The station," I said. "Power. Systems. Whatever they're using to get in. If they're piggybacking on the sensor suite, the pumps, the comms. You want to shut down life support while we're 600 meters under," he said flatly. "Not all of it," I said. "Just disrupt it. Break the pattern. Enough to make them lose their grip." He stared at me like I'd suggested we open the hatch. But then his gaze flicked to the bulkhead, to the water, to the people around us, swaying gently in time with the song. "Main control is on level 3, he said reluctantly. "If we can get there." "Security has access," I said. "Your security." "Yeah," he said. "And I'm supposed to stop idiots doing suicidal shit, not lead it." "Please," I said. "You saw the footage. You saw Mrs. Innes. You saw your own arm. Do you want to end up like them? Hugging something that isn't real while this place fills up like a bathtub?" He closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were bleak. "Stay close," he said. "If we go under, I'm kicking you to the ceiling." We waded away from the bulkhead, against the slow press of the crowd. The emergency lights made everyone's faces look carved out of wax. Some people watched us go with dull curiosity. Others didn't seem to see us at all. As we rounded the curve toward the service ladder, I glanced back. Through the little porthole in the bulkhead, something was watching. Too dark, vertical slits in the blackness. Too far apart to be eyes. Too steady to be reflections. A second later, they were gone. I climbed like the ladder was on fire. Level 3's main control room is behind 2 locked doors and a retina scan nobody ever uses because the system broke years ago. Security got the doors open with a code override. The retina scanner blinked once, gave up, and unlocked with a resigned beep. Inside, the air was drier. For now, the main console surrounded a central pillar of cables and pipes. Screens showed readouts for pressure, oxygen levels, pump status. Most of them were yellow. A few were orange. 1 or 2 flickered red. Perez was there, of course, and 2 engineers. They all turned as we stumbled in. "Dripping, what the fuck are you doing here?" Perez demanded. "Trying not to drown," Rafi said. "You seen the hub?" "I can see the hub," Perez said, nodding at a monitor. The tiny figures on screen swayed in the red light. Water glinted at their feet. I told everyone to stay put. "We can't have people running around while we..." "They're not staying put because of you," I cut in. "They're staying because something is singing to them." Perez glared at me. "I don't have time for... They're in the systems," I said. "Whatever those things are, they've got into our heads and our hardware. We need to disrupt it." "How?" one of the engineers asked weakly. He looked about 19. His lips were blue. "Shut it down," I said. Perez rounded on me. "You suggesting we cut main power? Do you have a better idea?" I asked, because standing here watching the water rise doesn't seem super effective. He opened his mouth, then looked at the consoles again. The pressure readouts for the outer shell were dropping, slowly but steadily. The pump status indicators flickered as the system struggled. "Emergency protocol says maintain power to life support at all costs," he said, almost to himself. Emergency protocol also didn't account for psychic C parasites, I said. He shot me another glare, but it lacked heat. We could isolate sections, the younger engineer said nervously. Shunt power away from non-essentials. Try to overload the external sensors, maybe. Blind the sonar. If they're using that as a vector, how much time would that buy us? Rafi asked. At current leak rates? Perez said. An hour. Maybe. And then, I said, and then we're out of tricks. The silence in the room was broken only by the faint hiss of air and the static crackle from the speakers as the song filtered through the walls. Do it, Rafi said suddenly. We all looked at him. Cut everything that isn't keeping us breathing, he said. Lights, gravity assist, heating, fuck it, even some of the pumps. Make this as quiet as a tomb. See if they stop singing. You realize what you're asking, Perez said. We'll be blind. In the dark. In the cold. At depth. If anything goes wrong, we won't even see it coming. I laughed, a short, harsh bark. And right now we're what? On a guided tour. Perez glared at me one more time, then turned to the console. Fine, he muttered. If this kills us, I'm haunting you. The engineers moved to their stations. Fingers flew. Screens shifted. One by one, the little icons representing non-essential systems blinked from green to gray. Down in the hub, the red emergency lights went out. For a moment, the camera showed only darkness and faint ghost glow from the water. Then even that faded as the cameras themselves died. The song stuttered. It didn't stop entirely, but it wavered, like a voice passed through a bad radio connection. The tone dipped, then rose again, slightly off-key. The water around our boots rippled, little waves clashing. More, I said. We're at minimum, Perez snapped. Any lower and we're all breathing our own farts in the dark till the CO2 scrubs fail. Then we wait, Rafi said. We waited. Minutes stretched. The song ebbed and flowed. Sometimes it was so loud in my bones I thought my ribs would crack. Sometimes it faded until I wondered if I'd imagined it. In the dim glow of the remaining monitors, droplets of water formed on the cables running up the central pillar. They slid downward with deliberate slowness, merging with each other, growing fat. On one of the pressure readouts, a number ticked down by 1. Inner holes starting to sweat too, the younger engineer whispered. Shut up, Perez muttered. I thought about my cabin, about the thing on my bunk, alone now, if it even cared about loneliness. About the knock on the door. I thought about Mrs. Innes and Agnes and Marcus, clinging to their parodies. The song rose again, sudden and piercing. It felt angry now, hurt, betrayed. Maybe they don't like the dark, I said. Good, Perez said through clenched teeth. The speaker overhead crackled. For a second, I thought it was the song breaking through. Instead, a voice came. To base Echo 9, it said, faint buried under static. This is SSV Harrier on approach vector. Respond, Echo 9. We have received your anomaly report. ETA to surface buoy 15 minutes. Repeat, 15 minutes. We all froze. Surface vessel, Rafi breathed. They're actually sending someone. Harrier, Perez muttered. That's the survey ship. They must have been in the area. Can they get us out? I asked. Perez looked at the blinking amber on the hull schematic, at the reduced power indicators, at the slowly rising water around our feet. Maybe some of us, he said, if we can get the tube clear. How the fuck do we do that? Rafi said. When it's full of whatever that is? We all turned to the schematic. The bulge on the rail tunnel flickered on the screen, still there but different, smaller, like it was deflating. Dark, I said. What? I didn't like the dark, I said, or the cut sensors. Whatever we did, it pissed them off. On the external drone feed, now running on residual power, the bulge rippled. Something pale oozed out from between the ridges, flowing back toward the main structure. The metal slowly relaxed behind it. They're leaving, the young engineer whispered. Going where? Rafi asked. A knock answered him. Not on the bulkhead this time. On the console itself. Everyone jumped. A bead of water had formed on the underside of the console's lip. It swelled, then detached, hitting the panel with a tiny tap. Then another formed, and another. Talp! 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 They're in the pipes, I said, in the walls. If they can't push from outside, they'll seep in from inside. Use whatever water pathways we give them. The knock became a drip, a steady, pattering rain inside the control room, with no clouds, no sky, no anything. In the song, under the tone, I heard something else. Words, or something like them. It felt like please. I remember the way it felt when that thing pressed against me in my bunk. The way my heart softened. The way everything else went quiet. I think they're scared, I said. Good, Perez said. Or desperate, I added. Rafi shot me a look. Don't start feeling sorry for them now. You saw what it did to us. I thought of Mrs. Innes' face when they dragged her away from the dead thing in her arms. Of the complete, absolute devastation there. They're good at mimicking, I said. Emotions, shapes, sounds. Maybe they don't even know what they're copying. Maybe they just reflect whatever we want. Then what do you want? Rafi asked. The question hung there. I wanted the surface. I wanted real wind and rain and sunlight and crappy diner coffee. I wanted my old shitty apartment where the only water on the floor was from a leaky sink. I wanted parents I didn't talk to anymore. Friends I drifted from. A life that wasn't steel and salt and humming pumps. Instead, I had this station, these walls, these people, this thing that had crawled into my life and curled up like it belonged. They're not leaving, Perez said. The best we can hope for is keeping them out of the critical systems long enough to get a car up. And the people, I asked quietly, the ones with attachments? Silence. We can't take them all, Perez said finally. Not if they're going to fight us. Not in this water. So that was it. Save what we could. Leave the rest behind with their gray familiars and the rising tide. The Harrier's voice came again, clearer this time. Echo 9, this is Harrier. We are at the buoy. Rail car is ready for descent. Repeat, ready for descent. Awaiting your go. Everyone looked at Perez. He looked at me. You want it out so badly, he said. Here's your shot. Not just me, I said. You and whoever you can drag to the tube without them clawing your eyes out, he said. That's what we got time for. 9 seats. 10 if we cram. 9. 87 people on base. It didn't feel like a choice. It felt like a sick joke. Rafi straightened. His face had settled into that grim mask I'd seen on the camera earlier. We'll take the ones who aren't attached, he said. The ones who can see. The kids if we can pry them away. Anyone who's still here. And the rest. I asked. He didn't answer. We moved fast. There's a strange clarity that comes when you know exactly how little time you have. The corridors seemed shorter. The doors lighter. The water colder. We grabbed who we could. The Sanchez twins, crying and confused. Eva from hydroponics, clutching a wilted plant. A wiry tech from the pump room who stared at the water like it had personally betrayed him. Agnes refused to come. He's scared, she kept saying, standing in water up to her knees outside the sealed door to her old module. He doesn't understand why you did this. I have to go back. You can't, I said. The module's flooded. He's gone. No, he isn't, she said, looking at me like I was an idiot. He's right there. She pointed at the bulkhead. Can't you hear him? The song swelled as if on cue. Please, I said. Agnes, please. She smiled at me, sad and soft. You go, she said. You're not meant for down here. You never were. She turned away. We couldn't waste more time. Marcus was in the store. Of course he was. Standing behind the counter in water that now lapped at his waist, clipboard still in hand. The shelves around him had begun to float, items drifting. A carton of instant noodles bumped against his elbow. Come with us, I yelled over the song. He looked up. His face was calm, happier than I'd ever seen it. I'm exactly where I need to be, he said. My wife's waiting in the back. She hates the water. There is no back, I said. The storage room behind him was flooded to the ceiling. The door was open, water churning. Something pale slithered in the depths. He glanced over his shoulder. For a second, his expression flickered. Then he smiled. She's waving, he said. We left him there, laughing at something only he could see. By the time we reached the bulkhead to the rail tunnel again, the water in the hub was up to our waists. The bioluminescence had grown brighter, swirling around us in patterns that felt like fingers. The knock on the bulkhead had become a constant, low thud. It sounded like a heartbeat. "Control, this is Harrier." The speaker crackled overhead, faint through the storm of other noise. "We're sending the car down. Lock on in 3 minutes." "Repeat, 3 minutes." 3 minutes, Perez muttered. "We can do 3 minutes." The porthole in the bulkhead showed nothing, just black, but the water around the door churned like something massive was breathing on the other side. Rafi clutched my arm. "The thing in your cabin," he shouted over the din, "if it knows you're leaving, it'll be pissed," I suggested. "Or it'll make sure you don't go," he said. As if summoned, I heard it. Not the song. A smaller sound, closer. A soft, familiar whine. I turned. At the far edge of the hub, half submerged, something white moved. Part of me screamed. The rest of me broke. She slogged toward me, through the water, ears flat, tail low. Her fur hung heavy, dripping. Her eyes were huge, dark pools. In the bioluminescent glow, she looked like a ghost. "Fuck," I said, voice cracking. Rafi grabbed me. "No." She followed, I said. "No." He repeated, shaking me. "That's not her. That's never been her." She waded closer. The water barely seemed to touch her. In the reflection on the ceiling, something enormous and pale twisted. She stopped a few meters away, chest heaving, and looked up at me. I could feel her without touching. That same flood of warmth. Safety. Home. "You're leaving," she said. Not out loud, not in words, but I understood all the same. "I have to," I whispered. Her head tilted. The water around her paws glowed brighter. "You could stay," the feeling suggested. "It's cold up there. Hard. Here, you have warmth. You have me. You're not real," I said, but my voice shook. "Is that what matters?" the feeling asked. Rafi yanked me backward. "Eyes on me," he barked. "Don't listen." The others we'd gathered clung to each other behind us, faces pale. The song from the walls and the silent plea from the thing in front of me braided together in my head, making something almost unbearable. I thought about drowning, about how they say it's peaceful after the panic, once you stop fighting. "Please," she said without saying. In the port window, the rail car's docking lights flicked on. 2 bright circles in the black getting closer. "We have to go," Rafi shouted. "Go," she said without saying. The feeling shifted, sharpened. "Go. It's okay. I'll be here." I hesitated. In the glass, the thing's true form was clearer than ever. Limbs like eels, mouth a dark, black rift, teeth. But overlaid on it, just for me, was that white, stupid, fluffy dog. It wagged its tail and thumped the water. In the real world, the waves that movement made were too big. "I'm sorry," I said. It took a step closer. Teeth flashed. Something in me snapped. I pushed Rafi aside and stepped forward, not toward it, but past it toward the bulkhead. For a fraction of a second, the thing's expression changed. Hurt, confusion, then hunger. It lunged. Rafi tackled me. We went under. In the cold murk, surrounded by bioluminescent flecks, I saw it pass over us. In its true shape, just for a second, a tangle of limbs and mouths and empty eyes, moving like water itself. It hit the bulkhead with a force that made the entire station shudder. The porthole cracked. The sound it made didn't belong in air. A high, keening shriek layered over the song, piercing as pressure. Hands grabbed us, hauling us up. Someone screamed, "The lock, the lock." The rail car docked with a heavy, grinding thump. A green light blinked on the panel. Perez hit the override. The bulkhead door slid sideways. For a second, water surged in, almost knocking us off our feet. Then the pressure equalized. Beyond the door, the rail car waited. Dry. Lee. Salvation, in the form of a metal tube. "Go!" Perez roared. "Go, go, go." We shoved the kids in first. Then the tech. Then Eva. 9 seats. 10 if we crammed. We crammed. Rafi pushed me toward the hatch. "You're coming," I gasped. He shook his head. His bandaged arm bled clear again, water dripping into the rising flood. His eyes were distant. "Can't," he said. "Someone has to seal from this side." "I can." "No," he said, and there was that look again. That love. But this time it was for me, not some gray thing. "You're the one who saw this coming. Get topside. Tell them what happened. Make sure they know it's not just us losing it in the dark." The song rose, furious now. The water around our waists boiled with light. "Rafi," I said. He smiled. Actually smiled. "Don't name it," he said. "Don't give it that. Just remember." He shoved me into the car and slapped the hatch control. The door slid shut between us. Through the little round window, I saw him turn back toward the hub. The water at his feet glowed like a nest of stars. Something pale rose behind him, unfolding from the ceiling. His mouth moved. Maybe he yelled. Maybe he laughed. I'll never know. The rail car jolted, then began to rise. I felt in my bones. The shift of gravity. The gentle sway as the car disengaged from the docking clamps and started its ascent up the tube. Through the front viewport, all I saw for a while was the inside of the tunnel. Metal, condensation trickling. The faint bulge where the hull had warped and then relaxed. Something pressed against that bulge as we passed. The metal flexed inward just a little. A pale smear followed us for a few meters, then dropped away. The song faded. By the time we hit the thermocline, the bioluminescence had dimmed. The water outside the car went from black to dark blue. Tiny air bubbles streaked past the windows, catching the light. No one spoke. The kids sobbed quietly. Someone prayed under their breath. Eva held her plant like it was a life preserver. I sat there, soaking wet, shaking, listening. At around 300 meters, I thought I heard it again. Faint. A single, soft knock on the underside of the car. No one else seemed to notice. At 50 meters, sunlight broke through a distant, wavering glow. The Harrier's docking cradle caught us with a jolt. The hatch hissed. Fresh air. Real air, cold and sharp and full of salt and sky. Washed in. Hands helped us out, up onto a deck that moved in a way that wasn't mechanical. The roll of waves. The give of water. They wrapped us in blankets, pushed hot drinks into our numb hands, shouted questions we couldn't answer. I stumbled to the rail, drawn by habit. The sea slapped against the hull below, gray-green and angry, white caps whipped by wind. The buoy that marked the station's location bobbed nearby, its light still blinking faithfully. Beneath it, just visible in the churn, something moved. A shadow, darker than the surrounding water. Wide, spreading. I stared down into it until my eyes hurt. The ship's engines rumbled under my feet. Someone yelled behind me. A gull screamed overhead. On the surface, everything is noise. And yet, under it all, I thought I heard it. A single, soft knock far below, like something gently tapping on the underside of the world. I live in a coastal town now. Couldn't make myself go too far inland. I work at a marina of all things. Fixing lines, checking hulls, selling bait and beer to weekend sailors. People ask why someone who's seen what I've seen stays near the water. I tell them it's because I like the smell, the sound of waves, the way light moves on the surface. It's also because I want to hear it if it comes back. Sometimes late at night, when the wind drops and the sea goes flat and black, I walk to the end of the longest pier. I lean over the rail, looking down at my own reflection in the dark. Sometimes, just for a moment, I see something else looking back. Something thin and gray, with too many teeth. Sometimes from deep below, where no rope reaches and no anchor holds, I hear it. 3 slow knocks, patient and steady, waiting,